polls. Of course, if it doesn't favor you, you dismiss it and say opinion polls are doctored. But at least this one seems to give us very many suggestions. One, and I think that President William Ruto's approval rating after winning the election in 2022 has dropped to 32%. But I think it gets more interesting looking at his main challengers for the same seat. Wakili, how do you see this panning out?
So thank you very much. I'm not seeing much surprises. That has always been our trend since 2007. 2002 it wasn't clear, but 2007 onwards, this has always been the trend, in the sense that you have the incumbent president with his core constituency, and most of the time the incumbent president is always ahead. And then you have the pretenders to the throne in form of the different individual opposition members. And Kalonzo, though, is not matching up what Raila Odinga has always been, because Raila Odinga seemed to always command at 35 to 45% before election fever kicks in. And once election kicks in, he would then amalgamate into that 50% that he would always get. So what I'm saying here is no surprises. The only maybe difference would be, I think the biggest new kid on the block is Edwin Sifuna, because it puts him in the conversation. Now that must be a key pointer. Number two, I also see that the president has improved. Why am I saying so? If you go back to between 24, 25, Gen Z protest, post-Gen Z protest, the president had his opinion ratings going down. So you are seeing an upward trajectory of 32%, which means if it is to be believed, then it means he has an 18% gap to be able to cover, if you are to use these figures. However, the difference then comes in. You've seen the number of candidates on the table spread out, and for varied reasons. For example, if all factors are held constant, you don't expect, for example, that the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua will be standing, so that's a vote hanging. And then you also have the others below that are basically names. How they'll amalgamate, then that comes into question. Importantly, the contest then would be between Matiang'i and Sifuna. Where is their placing in terms of who's likely? Because if you are to use this, then you would say it, more or less the safe bet for their presidential candidate for the opposition would be Musyoka. But then where do you place the running mate? And Matiang'i and Sifuna occupy same spot in terms from western side. You have eastern western card. The president is already set. He comes from the western side, that is the rift, and the Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki comes from the eastern. So I would expect the opposition to do the opposite, and that's where then it becomes murky. If you've looked at the last 3-4 days or the last 1 week, the conversation about a flag bearer is gaining steam. JB Muturi seems to have already made his mind that he's backing Kalonzo, and he's pushing the opposition towards that direction. That I don't think is clear. You still have Omunyoro 45-day respite, which would mean he's buying time. Specifically, I suspect tomorrow is very critical for DCP. If they lose, woe unto him, because it would mean his bargaining chip goes down. If they win in
Ol Kalou.
In Ol Kalou. In fact, I mentioned that Ol Kalou will be the single most important pointer between the fight between UDA and DCP within Central Kenya. So if Omunyoro wins, then it means he'll have some bullish sense of confidence to push then and say, I can now sit on the table and bargain for this. So what I'm saying is a case of the opposition getting into a very difficult position of negotiating for a flag bearer together with a running mate. I saw Sifuna mentioning 2-3 days ago that he does not want personalization of this movement in the opposition, because he was told by Omunyoro not to show up in Ol Kalou, something like that. So what I'm seeing is that then the president is waiting in the wings. Yes. The president has only one agenda. Let it play out. Let the opposition fight it out. Anyone who feels disjointed, and as he did in 2022, he only harvested anyone who was disjointed with the Azimio lineup, because Azimio ended up giving positions to the point of cabinet ministers, and that's when he picked them. So here, I'm seeing a case where the president would be clearly seeing where he is, and at the same time waiting for any fallout that will come out from the opposition.
And we're talking about that fallout because yesterday we had